on this issue. Thank you so much for talking to us.
Thank you, Janet.
You know, earlier on when I was talking to you, we were discussing perceived turf wars, what exactly is the issue, and you said you were very keen on making sure Kenyans have clarity with regards to what the different roles of the different bodies are.
Yeah.
So very briefly, could you tell us what the different roles are?
Thank you, Janet. Arising from the new constitutional dispensation, the architecture of the policing has changed. There are three players. One of them is the Inspector General, who is the overall commander of the National Police Service, with operational independence to run the day-to-day affairs of the National Police Service together with his deputies. Then you have the National Police Service Commission, which is responsible for the HR functions, the human resource issues of the police, that's the recruitment, the transfer, the deployment, and the like, and the welfare of the police generally. This was a function that was being exercised previously by the Public Service Commission, but because of the unique nature of the policing agencies, it was thought that it is useful to have a dedicated body to look after their human resource issues. Then finally you have the Independent Police Oversight Authority. We are not police on our part. We are civilian authority over the work of the police on behalf of the public. We do it for the public to hold the police accountable. We take on board the complaints against the police, complaints by the police against the police. We monitor the operations. We investigate, death and serious injury claims against the police. We oversee the internal affairs unit of the police, monitoring their investigations, and also to inspect the police premises, but on behalf of the public.
So in light of this new issue, the perceived turf wars as they're being described, what is your authority doing?
Now, as a matter of fact, a lot is happening. The executive is already taking, appropriate action in terms of making sure that these issues are resolved. And even within the institution itself, the National Police Service, we are aware that something is happening. But what I can say is this: there shouldn't be differences, because what should have ideally happened from the start upon the National Police Service Commission coming on board was to ensure that there are clear policies and regulations that would govern their processes. Processes of transfers, processes of promotions, etc., making sure that these are in place. Then they are handed over to the Inspector General for implementation, so that it is the Inspector General to do the actual transfer, not the National Police Service. The National Police Service Commission should be able to ensure that theirs is to check if the Inspector General is undertaking a transfer, is it in tandem, is it in line with the set policies, with the set regulations. That had not happened, and that should have been the starting point, and that would have avoided all these conflicts that are there.
Now, you've talked about, you've shed some more, given more clarity with regards to the roles of the National Police Service Commission, the Inspector General as well. You've touched a little bit on the fact that there is a conflict, but in your view, what is the root cause, the absolute root cause of this conflict that we're seeing?
The absolute root cause is the lack of clear policies and regulations which should have been set from the start. Because see, the police, I was a member of the Ransley task force that gave the recommendations on setting up of the commission, giving operational independence to the Inspector General, and having also the civilian oversight. Now, I can tell you for a fact that a lot of police officers were complaining and saying that the manner in which the transfers were being undertaken and the promotions, it was not fair. It was being used as a punishment, and you needed to know somebody higher up somewhere for you to be promoted. So there was no clarity on the processes. And that's why it was necessary to have a dedicated institution that will be able to ensure that all these policies are being followed. Now, it would be a huge mistake to repeat the same mistakes for the commission again to start undertaking these processes without putting in place the policies and the regulations. And if this had been put in place, I believe there would not have been a problem. Secondly, you have to remember that the commission has 9 members. Now, out of these 9 members, the Inspector General is a member, and the 2 deputies are also members. They are supposed to all sit together and ensure that there is consensus in all the decisions they make.
Are they not doing that?
Now, the problem has been that there has been an impression created that the Inspector General and the deputies are ex officio, are supposed to full members within the commission. They should all be able to sit together and agree on all issues before they are rolled out for implementation.
Is this not affecting national security? I know a lot of people, even those who are writing in, are saying, hang on, it almost looks like the Inspector General's hands are tied. That's the perception. And therefore, whenever there's an issue of national security, nothing moves because his hands are tied. Again, that's just the confusion. So just clarify that for us and tell us what needs to be done.
No, what needs to be done, there's absolutely no doubt that there's need for clarity insofar as the legislation is concerned, to ensure that the functions of the Inspector General are clearly the functions of the Inspector General, to the extent that you don't have the National Police Service Commission on encroaching on their mandate. That does not mean that you don't need the National Police Service Commission. It's a very useful tool, because, again, if you don't have them in place, you'll be as it were, creating a disadvantage to the police service members, because you need that body where the police service members can ensure that there's fairness in the transfers, promotions, etc., etc. It is just a question of making sure that there are policy guidelines, that there are regulations that are understood by the police, and they're implemented by the Inspector General, so that the National Police Service Commission should not start doing the work of the Inspector General. But again, even on the part of the Inspector General, he should be able to be made, a full member of the commission, and recognized as such by his fellow colleagues within the National Police Service Commission, so that whatever they do, they're able to agree together.
There's no political angle to this.
No, there's no political angle. I have absolutely no doubt. There's no political angle. Okay. It's just a question of making sure that there are clear policies and regulations that are implemented correctly. Now, regarding the legislation, in my view, there will be need for amendment of the law to the extent of clarifying the mandate of the two bodies.
And that's something
that's the Inspector General and the National Police Service Commission, not to water down the powers of the National Police Service Commission, but to clarify, so that whatever the National Police Service Commission does is to put in these policies and regulations and to check whether they are being implemented correctly by the Inspector General. Okay. But the actual work of the transfer and also the operational command of the National Police Service is the exclusive mandate of the Inspector General.
We're likely to see the amendment of the law? We're likely to see that?
That should be there. I believe it is in the process, and it should be there. There shouldn't be issues about it, as long as the amendments are to clarify the powers of the two and to ensure that there's that smooth operation of the national security.
Certainly a story that we're going to be seeing over the next few days. Thank you for clarifying that for us. Of course, the chairman of the Independent Police Oversight Authority giving us his views on the perceived turf wars in the police service. You are watching Sunday Live, and